Even though progressives such as myself have expressed reservations about supporting Keith Ellison's bid to be the next DNC chair, namely because of some of his foreign policy stances, well, he's given us another reason to support him over Tom Perez, and that's because he's vowing to ban lobbyist contributions to the DNC. Now, when you juxtapose his stance on this with Tom Perez's, the choice becomes even more clear. So Keith Ellison states, "I think it's important that people feel that the party is their party. There is a pragmatic, perhaps too pragmatic step that you can say, we'll just take whatever money from whatever source in whatever amount. But once you do that, I think you cross a line where people do not feel that the party is really theirs." Now, according to the Huffington Post, President Barack Obama banned lobbyist contributions to the Democratic National Committee after winning the 2008 election, but the then DNC chair, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, quietly lifted the ban during Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential run. In a December interview with Huffington Post, Ellison's chief rival, Labor Secretary Tom Perez, refused to rule out lobbyist donations. "I think we have to have everything on the table," Perez said. "We have to have a conversation where we bring in all the stakeholders and say, what is the vision of the Democratic Party? Lobbyists contribute only a small fraction of the money raised by the Democratic Party, and while they do grease the gears in Washington, D.C., they're paid to do the bidding of other big donors, CEOs, private equity bigwigs, and other well-heeled operators who few politicians are willing to blacklist from the donor rolls. But for Ellison, the lobbyist contributions are a matter of public perception and voter engagement. People need to feel like, hey, you know this Democratic Party? It's my party," Ellison said. And part of what gives them that sense that it is their party and that they possess it, that they own it, is that they pay for it. And he's 100% right. And I think that this really does communicate to progressives that he is serious about reforming the Democratic Party and putting control of the party back in the hands of voters as opposed to donors. Now, when it comes to Tom Perez here, they didn't unequivocally state that he would not reinstate this ban on lobbyist contributions to the DNC, but let me just decode what he's saying, because he's being very manipulative in his language. So by saying you want to, quote, bring all stakeholders in, that means that you want to allow donors to have a say as well. You want to allow big donors as well as voters to have a stake and have a say in where the Democratic Party goes and what it does. And when you do that, you inevitably set up a situation where the Democratic Party governs at the behest of their big donors and not the voters, because obviously, as a normal citizen, I can't compete with lobbyists. I could submit a donation here and there to politicians, but I'll never be able to compete with a lobbying firm. I'll never be able to compete with Comcast and voice to them that I want net neutrality to be permanent, because Comcast has more money than me, and Comcast can donate millions of dollars to the super PACs of politicians that could donate to the DNC and basically wipe out any say that I have and every other American has. So when you allow all stakeholders to come to the table, what you're really saying here, Tom, is that you want to allow the Democratic Party to continue being corrupt and to listen to their donors. What Keith Ellison is doing here is he's saying, no, once and for all, we're going to close the door to the donors, and the DNC will not be listening to donors any longer. This party belongs to the people, and they have to feel as though it belongs to them too. And you start by taking this step in the right direction and banning contributions from lobbyists. So this to me is a no-brainer. And Tom Perez's unwillingness to unequivocally state that he's going to ban contributions from lobbyists, it's a joke. It shows that Tom Perez is just more of the status quo. And if the DNC goes with Tom Perez and undermines the endorsement of Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer and many labor movements and labor unions, then they're clueless and they don't want to win. They're choosing to lose and be corrupt rather than win and not be corrupt. So we have to make sure that Keith Ellison wins. I know there's a lot that he's done that has gotten under my skin, and there's a lot that I disagree with him on. But again, when it comes to economic policy, I think that in restructuring the Democratic Party so that way they operate at the behest of voters as opposed to donors, that's the only way you can win again. And I don't want Trump to be in office for 8 years. I want Republicans to be kicked out of Congress. I want a Democratic Party that represents the people and not the donors. So Keith Ellison understands that, and that's why he should be the DNC chair.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.